They called security on her, before she had even opened her mouth. No warning. No heads up. Just bam! 2 officers walking side by side, summoned like backup in a silent emergency. Marching straight toward a black woman, standing quietly in line. First-class boarding pass gripped in hand like a golden key she wasn't supposed to have. The gate agent didn't even look at the pass. Didn't blink. Didn't pause. Didn't need to. "Ma'am, step aside." That was it. 4 words. Delivered with a chilling firmness. The kind of tone you don't use on travelers. You reserve it for trespassers. And she knew it. Everyone did. As she was gently, yet firmly, pulled out of the queue, a dozen heads turned. But not to speak up. Not to protest. No phones raised. No "hey, what's going on?" Eyes full of silent confirmation. Like they'd all silently agreed. Yeah, she doesn't look like seat 1A material. Not with that skin tone. Not with that quiet. Not with that steady, unreadable calm. But here's the twist. The part no one in that terminal could have known. Not the gate agent. Not the supervisor who smirked smugly from the kiosk, like this was routine. And definitely not the man who waltzed through right after her, unchecked, unbothered, without even flashing his ID. Because the woman they just tried to erase from the first-class line. She didn't just buy a fancy seat. She bought something far more powerful. And when you find out what that was, you'll understand why no one on that plane, no one, flew the same ever again. This isn't just a story about race. This isn't just about profiling or prejudice. This is a story about power. The kind that hides in plain sight. The kind that walks softly but shifts everything. The kind that sits in seat 2A and changes the whole flight without saying a word. So let me ask you this. What happens when the person you try to silence, the one you try to disappear, turns out to own the silence itself? Exploding head. Who is she? Why didn't she react? Why didn't she argue, shout, or resist? And more importantly, what did she come here to do? Drop your theories in the comments. Let's talk. Also tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Globe showing Europe, Africa. And if you believe that real justice doesn't always show up screaming, but sometimes arrives with quiet eyes and undeniable grace, hit that subscribe button. You'll want to be here when this truth lands. The city skyline was still cloaked in sleep when Autumn Riley walked through the terminal doors. It was early, 5:43 a.m., even for a major airport. But the priority access line, already stretching like the start of a business summit. She stood just slightly off to the side, not because she didn't belong there, but because she'd learned the hard way. Sometimes proximity invites problems. Questions. Autumn wore a simple navy blue hoodie, fitted jeans, scuffed sneakers that told stories of their own. Her hair was tied back in a no-fuss low bun, and on her shoulder, just one thing, a worn canvas tote. No roller bag. No high-end luggage. No branded labels flashing wealth. Just her. And a presence that didn't shout but quietly declared, "I've done this before. And for more important reasons than a beach vacation." She stepped toward the queue. At the front stood a tall, slim, sharply dressed employee. His name tag read Kyle. His face carried the kind of smile that belonged to someone who had practiced it in a mirror. But the moment Autumn got close, the smile didn't quite hold. "Hi there," Kyle said, tilting his head just slightly to the side. "This lane is for executive and first-class travelers only." Polite. But there was something under it. A tiny thread of assumption, tugging at the edges of his tone. Autumn didn't blink. She just held up her phone, showing him the digital boarding pass. "I know," she said evenly. Kyle's eyes darted to the screen, then back to her. For a brief flicker, barely a second, his smile faltered, but professionalism snapped back in. He scanned the code, forcing his voice into its usual rhythm. "Right. You're in. Okay, proceed, ma'am." But as she moved past, Kyle leaned toward a nearby colleague, voice just low enough to seem private, but just loud enough for Autumn to hear. "Thought she was lost." The colleague chuckled. Low, lazy laugh. Autumn didn't turn. She didn't react. She just walked. But the microaggressions kept stacking. At security, even though her boarding pass clearly showed TSA pre-check, she got pulled aside. Random check, the agent mumbled, motioning her to a separate table. They opened her tote, rifling through the modest contents. Travel-sized toiletries, a paperback novel, one sealed envelope, and a red string folder. The agent paused. "What's this?" "Legal documents," she said, calm as ever. "Private. You a lawyer or something?" "Not exactly." The agent flipped the envelope once more, shrugged, and waved her through. Behind her, the line moved like clockwork. Men in tailored suits. Couples with luggage that cost more than a month's rent. An elderly woman with a necklace so bright, it caught the light like a lens flare. Autumn noticed it all. But again, no reaction. She'd grown used to this choreography. The way the system leaned in just a little harder when you didn't look right. The way people's eyes and institutions, too, scanned some folks with more curiosity and suspicion than others. She made it to gate C9 early. Took a quiet seat in the corner. No phone scrolling. No music. No distractions. She simply pulled out that sealed envelope again, rested it on her lap like something sacred. It was small, but weighty. Not in mass, in meaning. Inside. The final documents on a financial deal set to reshape one of the biggest airline mergers in North America. Her vote, her signature, would finalize it. She didn't look like power. But she was the power. And no one around her had a clue. Not to the engines. Not to the turbulence that never arrived. But to everything else. The pauses in conversation. The rustle of discomfort. The subtle recalibrations happening around her. Too small to be called confrontation. Too pointed to be coincidence. She knew the air was shifting. The envelope in her lap might have looked like nothing. Just paper. Just ink. But she knew better. She knew it held leverage. Keystone document. Fulcrum. A single vote capable of delaying or detonating one of the most high-profile transportation deals in the last decade. And right now, everyone around her, from Sloane to Bryce to the man in 2B, they had no idea who she was. No idea that the woman they tried to reassign to seat 17D was the same woman whose signature could erase a few of their job titles by morning. And she wasn't bluffing. The seatbelt light turned off. The captain said something about weather patterns and tailwinds, but Autumn wasn't listening. Her gaze drifted from the clouds outside to her reflection in the window. There, framed by soft sky and sterile plastic, she looked like anyone. Which was exactly the point. They weren't supposed to see her coming. She remembered something her grandmother used to say. People think power is loud. That it walks in with fanfare. But real power slips through the door unnoticed. And by the time they realize it's there, it's already in the room, feet up, sipping tea. Autumn smiled faintly at the thought. From the corner of her eye, she saw Sloane pause near the cockpit, speaking quietly to Bryce. Both glanced back at her again, their expressions unreadable. Worried maybe, curious, suspicious. She couldn't tell. Didn't care. She didn't need their approval. What she needed was about an hour away, locked in a boardroom at Logan International, where a panel of executives, none of whom had ever met her in person, would be waiting to vote. But not without her. Because per the trust, her presence was required. Not just a signature. Not just a proxy. And when she walked into that room, looking like the woman who'd been nearly ejected from first class, who'd been denied water, nearly reassigned mid-flight for weight balance. Oh, they'd recognize her. Not at first. But the moment she opened that envelope. The moment they saw the letterhead, the ink, the authority granted to her by the late Wallace E. Riley. Yes, that Riley, the original founder of AirTrans Northwest, they'd understand. And by then, it would be too late to fix their tone.